To laugh is to risk looking like a fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. To reach out to another is to risk involvement. To expose feelings is to risk exposing your true self. To place your ideas and your dreams in front of a crowd is to risk their loss. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To hope is to risk despair. To try, failure. Welcome to another edition of Voices on the Green, where I'll take that. Thank you. Where we risk bringing together stories, music, and community service in the belief that in spite of all that is happening in our country right now, most of us would rather live in good civic space with one another, a space in which we cling to one another instead of claw at one another. We here at Voices on the Green really know that when we put out a call, we don't know what's really going to happen. We don't know how the community is going to respond or if they will respond. But we take it because we think this is worth the risk. And if we look around, we can see this is worth the risk tonight, correct? Now, the words I read were from a gentleman named William Arthur Ward. He was an American author and a motivational speaker. And he spoke about how to risk in much of what we do, and whether it's loving, whether it's laughing, living, even hoping. So given that we may all as well lean into this, as long as we have to risk, we might as well accept it, open ourselves to it, embrace it, and make it part of how we move through this world. And tonight, you will hear word and song about just this. We will hear word and song from those who have found the courage to jump off cliffs, both figuratively and literally. Stories of going against the exhortations of coworkers, of being at risk in the presence of someone who resents your very existence, risking a relationship with one's parents for love of one's country, of children eschewing authority to reach new heights, and of leaving the shores of financial stability and safety to risk wading into the fraught waters of entrepreneurism. In risking, all of us, all of our tellers this evening had to overcome a fear. They had to battle their inner selves to meet the demands of the moment that they were in. Music is filled with this idea, especially opera, even more so German opera. In Mozart's the abduction from the Seraglio, Pedrillo, who is a young man, has to rescue his beloved Constanza from enslavement. So to psych himself up to this task, he begins to sing Frisch zum Kampfe, which means now to battle. And what you'll hear is a German in its original German, but what it's saying in English is now to battle, now to arms. Should I tremble? Should I quake? Rather than valiantly risking my life, no, oh no, I will take that risk. Wow. Typical German love song. So tender, so tender. Thank you. Let's see what happens. Thank you. So once again, thanks to Ty and Sarah for gifting us with that. I'll say more about them in a bit, but now before I introduce our first teller, I just want to do a bit of housekeeping and let you know that in the unlikely event of an emergency, please move toward the nearest exit through those doors back there or through the doors back here where you see the word exit. And of emergencies of a more personal nature, if you go back this way, there is a restroom just after the door to your right, and there are more restrooms downstairs, just for you to know. And now, our first teller has come here from the longest distance of any of our tellers tonight. She walked all the way from the 18th century. In November 1775, the Revolutionary War was in its infancy, but the effects of it were being felt all across New England. Boston was under siege by the New Continental Army and with British soldiers trapped inside the city and refugees trapped outside. Now, among them was a woman named Lucy Flucker who risked leaving a life of privilege behind, not knowing what the consequences would be. Will you please join me in welcoming Lucy Flucker Knox.
Thank you, good sir. I never truly believed in love at first sight. Now, of course, my friends and I would wave at the soldiers on Boston Common. We would giggle and blush and run away when they would wave back, but that was all for show. It was just a bit of a game. I thought that my path would be chosen for me. Until one day that all changed, and I saw a magnificent militiaman on horseback. He was tall. He was uncommonly good-looking. And he had his hand mysteriously wrapped in a black silk scarf, which I later found was the result of a musket accident in which he had blown off 2 fingers. But I did not know that yet, and I was intrigued. "Who is that?" I said. "Henry Knox," said one of the other soldiers. "He is a captain of the Grenadiers, and he owns a bookshop just up the road in Cornhill." A bookshop. My favorite place in the world. What a match. The next day, I walked there, introduced myself, and from that moment on, I knew no other perfume than the sweet smell of fresh ink and paper. I think that Henry had never known a woman as well-read as I, and I know that I had never known a man who was not intimidated by that. Oh, we spoke of love and war and politics and history. The hours seemed to fly by like seconds. And before I knew it, he had asked for my hand in marriage. There was just one problem. My sweet, bookish Henry could never win the love of my family as he had won my own. They said that he was common. They said that he was a radical, that I was a fool who was too young to understand these things. But I knew better. From my room on our home in Summer Street, I could see straight down to the harbor on a clear day. I used to love watching the ship's masts swaying in the breeze. But I could see them at night too. And I was watching on the night they dumped the tea into the harbor. I remember because my father was working late that evening at the State House. He was the secretary to the province of Massachusetts Bay, one of the highest ranking officials in the government. Mother was furious. She took me aside and pointed down there and she said, "Are you willing to give up your life for those thugs? For boys who call for violence, who scorn our king and his laws? Treasonous men? Would you give up your inheritance for that?" But I would. I'd give up the land, I'd give up the money, all of it. Because Henry had shown me what my family and their friends could not see. He had read our history from the books in his shop, read about Magna Carta and our laws that had been trampled upon. And he had seen the violence that was wrought when that happened. When he was not much more than a boy himself in 1770, he was a witness to the bloody massacre on King Street. He had found his friends fighting with British soldiers in the street, had stood between them, begged the redcoats to put down their weapons and make peace, and had to stand by helplessly as they shot into the crowd anyway. He carried that burden with him. He just wanted to make the world a better place as things continued to escalate. And I wanted to be a part of that. So I packed up my things and I walked up the road to King's Chapel, and we were wed. And when we got back to our chambers above our little bookshop, I wrote a letter to my parents. It said, "I miss you. I wish you could have been here today." They had said that they did not want to be seen in public endorsing such an arrangement. Well, we had a year or so of bliss before the war finally started and took all of that away from us. When the British fired upon the men in Lexington and Concord, we fled to Watertown out of the city. When they turned their cannons upon the militia at Bunker Hill, Henry turned his cannon back towards them, and I fled further still. and I have been here ever since in Worcester. I must say, it is lonely here. I have other military wives with me, but it seems that they do not know what I have been through. And I write back to Boston nearly every day, hoping for some news of my family and trying to share my own. I tell them that while I am afraid, I am safe. I tell them that General Washington has seen what Henry can do, his potential that they could not see, and has made him a corporal in the artillery company. I tell them that we are soon to expect our first child together, but all of my letters have gone unanswered. It is November now. Winter is fast approaching, and I do not know what will happen next. The only news I get is from my husband, and with each letter I am afraid that he will be taken from me and thrust into danger. My only consolation is that when this happens, I hope that he will become the hero that I always knew that he would be, that he always wanted to be. The letter that I just received today makes me think that that time may soon be coming. It is dated November 10th, 1775. He tells me, "Keep up your spirits, my dear girl. Don't be alarmed when I tell you that the general has ordered me to go westward as far as Ticonderoga, about a 3 weeks' journey. Don't be afraid. There is no fighting in this case. I am going upon business only. My only regret will be to leave my love."
And General George Washington had tasked Henry Knox, just for those don't know, to travel to Fort Ticonderoga in New York to retrieve as many cannons as possible from the captured fort. There he oversaw what he called his noble train of artillery, which was 59 cannons weighing nearly 120,000 pounds. And he brought that back to Boston from Ticonderoga in the dead of winter, traveling over frozen lakes, traveling over mountains on handmade sleds. It took them 2 months to get back through all of that. And the threat of these cannons was enough to finally persuade the British to exit out of Boston and march on. And that is what we know as Evacuation Day. And despite those difficulties that lay ahead of them, the Knoxes survived, and they were able to reclaim Lucy's inheritance once they had moved to Maine. Lucy Flucker Knox was brought to us via the talents of Sarah McDonough, Sarah lives at the intersection of history and theater. Sarah loves creating portraits of historical personages from the perspectives, whether they are patriots or loyalists or turncoats. And she always brings something of them, brings their complexities out and a better understanding of the histories with which we wrestle. Imagine actually trying to understand multiple points of view before you make a decision about something. Thank you, Sarah. Our next teller, Janel Showalter, loves tennis, history, travel, but much to the disappointment of her backyard, she cares nothing for gardening. I know, if I had pearls, I would clutch them. However, you might know the difference between a hydrangea and a hydrant. And maybe you can effectively operate inside of a space of plants and wildflowers, but can you operate a forklift? She can. Which she did for 2 summers as a young adult doing factory work. Perhaps this was one of the times in her life when she discovered something about herself that surprised her. here to tell another story about risk and self-discovery. Will you please welcome Janel Showalter.
I sat cross-legged in a circle with my fellow kindergartners, looking up at a rope hanging from the ceiling. This was exciting in its newness because a rope had never been available to us in the handful of gym classes we'd been to so far. This was a big day. I'd just had my very first school picture taken, and now we were getting ready to embark in this fall of 1975 on our very first physical fitness test, the first of 2 that year that would measure our athletic progress through kindergarten. I didn't know it at the time, but would soon come to realize that for many kids, there are few things scarier than having to reveal in front of sometimes jeering classmates how few sit-ups or pull-ups you can do, or how slow a runner you are. And that for many, the worst, most nervous, sweat-inspiring test of all was the rope climb. But I was an experienced 5-year-old tree climber, and I was thrilled to see that rope. As I sat looking up, I noticed about halfway up a little red ribbon tied around the rope. I was wondering what this was when the gym teacher began to explain the rules. Boys were to climb up as high as they could. Girls were to climb to that red ribbon and no further. Boys would be testing their limits, but no girl would be allowed to find out if she could climb to the top of that rope. Now, I was a tree climber. I was a kid who liked to play in the dirt and explore the woods behind my house. I would cry if I was forced to wear tights or even brush my hair. I roughhoused with the boys, so I was completely baffled as to why there would be different rules for boys and girls. It just didn't make any sense to me. You see, I was the daughter of a woman who had faced discrimination because of arbitrary rules, and she had done her best to instill in my sister and I a belief that we could do anything that a boy could do. When she was in college studying economics in the mid-1960s, her male classmates, and sadly her professors too, made it very clear that they felt that women did not belong in the economics department. They tried to humiliate her by turning their backs on her when she presented in front of the class. And they took every opportunity to let her know that they felt she did not belong. Nevertheless, she persisted. And she got her degree in economics despite their efforts. So by 1975, my very first year in elementary school, and incidentally, the International Year of the Woman, she had raised 2 daughters to believe that we could do and be anything we wanted, and that the only limits we had were those that we set for ourselves. So imagine my confusion when, completely confident that I could climb to the top of that rope, I was told that that red ribbon was my limit. I watched as lots of girls climbed to the ribbon and then climbed back down. I watched lots of boys too, Some made it all the way to the top. Others looked longingly at that red ribbon and then failed to reach the top. And then it was my turn. But I was kind of struggling. You see, in addition to being that adventurous tree climber, I was also inherently a rule follower. So much so that my kindergarten teacher was already putting me between the rowdy boys in the hopes that somehow my rule-following behavior would rub off on them. A rule had clearly been set, and I knew you got in trouble if you broke rules. But this rule wasn't fair. This rule set a limit that wasn't my limit. And so, as I held on to that rope, something inside me said to take a risk and climb. And so I climbed. When I reached the red ribbon, my classmates clapped. When I passed it, they gasped. I also heard a whistle and a firm instruction to get right back down that instant. But I kept going. And I reached the top of the rope easily. And when I looked down, I could see that every eye in that gym was on me. I knew I was in trouble. But I also knew that they all knew that I could climb to the top of that rope. When I got back down, I was instructed to go talk to the principal about my unsafe, risky behavior. Honestly, I don't really remember that conversation. What I do remember is how proud my mother was when I told her what I had done. And that at that second physical fitness test, at the end of the academic year, the red ribbon was gone.
Janel Showalter. Ty, we're just going to try this. We're going to see what happens. Ty Johnson enjoys cooking and glass blowing. He also enjoys his partner and his family. He knows that though he can do much by himself, without their love and support, he would just be a fraction of who he is today. Ty adamantly believes that everyone can sing, and in spite of the fact that he heads the tenor section at this church choir and has no doubt heard many of us in the pews, he has not yet been disabused of that notion. Never will. As a musician, Ty wants to give back to the world, and he believes music is transformative, healing, and wants to use music to build community and make the world better. Ty is being accompanied by conductor and pianist Sarah Hager. Sarah absolutely hates peanuts, but she does love her two cats, Lucifer and Josephine Baker. And though Sarah is the interim music director of this church, this is her first time at Voices on the Green. Give both of them a round of applause, please. Now, before Ty and Sarah lead us into the next song, which will be My Way, the last song before our intermission, we at Voices felt the need to provide a little context. This song was complicated for us. I think we've never had a song this complicated with us trying to figure out what to do with it. But it was even complicated for Frank Sinatra, as he became concerned that the song was a stirring anthem for egotism and self-interest. Perhaps he thought that it might one day be co-opted in the service of some narcissistic, self-serving, egomaniacal, anti-constitutional fascist high on coke lines of Dunning-Kruger. in some far off distant time in some imagined America. So yes, we wrestled with this one, folks. On the one hand, it is important for a whole evening to recognize that doing things my way without properly anticipating both harms and benefits, not only for self but for others, is likely to result in bad outcomes rather than good ones. Those kinds of my way choices are likely bad risks to take. On the other hand, doing things my way can be a positive thing. When the culture, when the environment or friends are imposing or allowing tyranny, injustice, discrimination, inequity, prejudice, and as in the case of Janel's work, right, who risks as a kindergartner, challenged others' low expectations and narrow notions of what girls were capable of. So in those cases, doing things in a principled way that benefits others can be life-saving, good risks to take. But it's complicated. I guess what I'm asking you to do is what Ty and I were speaking about when we were talking about this song, and that is to do what many we wish more would, and that is reflect, right? Reflect on the times, I guess, when my way led to a good or less than shining outcome for ourselves, and maybe risk finding a my way that can lead us to a better civic space and maybe become our way. Please welcome Sarah and Ty.
And is a man? What has he got? If not himself, then he has not to say the things he truly feels, and not the words of one who kneels. The record shows I took the blows and did it my way.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's try it this way. Our last storyteller before we meet our community partner and head into intermission will be Ben Soule. Ben has worn many a hat, from carpentry to software engineering, but as a software engineer, he felt that he had reached what we call the Peter principle, and that it applied to him. So he decided to take a risk and follow his muse. Will you please welcome Ben Soule?
In 1982, I was working as a self-employed handyman and doing home repair and remodeling. The income was somewhat irregular, and with the purchase of a fixer-upper and the arrival of a beautiful baby girl, I needed to find a job that provided a dependable paycheck. I was fortunate to find a position as a technical aide at a nearby software company. I had no education or experience in that field, but it was a support position that required only the skills and the aptitude that I brought. I enjoyed the company and the work, and within a few years, one of the project heads took me under his wing, and I was promoted to associate software engineer. I was writing chunks of code, and I found that my logical mind was capable of performing the tasks that were required of me. Promotions to software engineer and senior software engineer followed. Then the project ended, so I responded to an offer from a headhunter and took a job at a different company. Now, you might remember the book called The Peter Principle. It was about what happens to people who are promoted to a position that is above their level of competence. So, at my new job, I realized that was a perfect example of the Peter Principle. I had no idea how to do the work I was assigned. I lasted 2 years there doing essentially nothing. This coincided with the time of my first wife's illness and death from a brain tumor, leaving me a single parent with a 9-year-old. Then a round of layoffs left me looking again for a new job. Incredibly, someone else picked me up. And again, I spent 2 years there, producing almost nothing. Around that time, I saw a magazine article about stress. It included an exercise listing a number of common situations that one might encounter, assigning points to each one according to the level of stress that each might incur. And there was a chart analyzing your score. I went down the list, checking the ones that applied to me. Job change, check, check. Serious illness of a loved one, check. Death of spouse, check. Starting a new relationship, check. Selling and buying a house and moving, check. Getting married? Check. My score, as you might imagine, was in the flashing red zone. In addition to that pile of stressors, I added 4 years of going to work almost every day, just keeping my head down and collecting my paycheck. The terror, the guilt, the self-loathing, the shame, and the loneliness were making me ill, physically and mentally ill. So when my performance review at company number 3 came up, I knew I was at a fork in the road. The part of the review that was mine to fill out had a question about what I saw myself doing over the next 2 years. I could fudge it, or I could be honest. I knew the latter would trigger a difficult conversation with my supervisor. But that was the choice I made. A week later, I was unemployed. Now, it may appear to you that I was taking a great risk, giving up a job that had allowed me to support myself, our house, our daughter, and my wife while she was ill and dying. However, it did not feel that way to me. It felt like a great burden. The burden of that soul-crushing stress had been lifted, allowing me to take a deep breath and start a new phase of my life, a time when I could explore the creativity that I had been putting aside for years. I had been toying with the idea of making and selling life-size dinosaur skeleton models. It was great fun, and I sold scores of them, but it was not a workable business model. So I went back to carpentry, cabinet making, and woodworking. And I made and sold hundreds of magic wands under the name Preston and Wicks during the Harry Potter craze. These things have given me the great satisfaction of seeing at the end of each day something I have created, something that gives pleasure to a customer or to a friend or to myself. I can't tell you how much that means to me to have turned a sharp corner and to have arrived here at a much better place in life.
All right. Thank you, Ben. In Parish Hall, where we will take our intermission, you will see that Ben has generously brought some of his excellent crafts for us to look at and check out the dinosaur models, his Harry Potter style wands, which are for sale, and his model of First Parish's second meeting house in the front foyer. Thank you again. As I said earlier, VOG seeks to do many things, but none are so as important as recognizing and supporting organizations that share our values of civic connection and human betterment, and also show those values by responding to human needs. To introduce our community partner, please welcome Voices on the Green Managing Director, Sarah Mannix.
Hello. Thank you for coming tonight. We think it's important that you know your neighbor and build community. Storytelling helps move us down that path. So thank you for sharing your stories and your music with us tonight. We also think that it's important to learn about and to support good work that's being done in our community. To that end, for each show, Voices on the Green selects a local nonprofit organization whose values are similar to our values. We promote them. Tonight, we acknowledge the work they do, and we share in the proceeds of the evening with them. We are very happy to be partnered with Boston Immigration Justice Accompaniment Network, or BIJAN. They will have a table in Parish Hall during intermission, so please stop by and learn about the good work that they do. I'd like to introduce a representative from BIJAN. Please welcome Robin Kuttner.
I am honored to be following all these amazing performers. I'm Robin, and I want to thank Voices on the Green for partnering with BIJAN or BIJAN. We are a network of volunteers in Massachusetts that supports people in immigration, jail, and others at risk of deportation. I myself am relatively new to this organization, and my entry point has been writing letters to men that are in the Plymouth jail so that they know they have not been forgotten. What draws me to BIJAN is the immediate impact the impact their work has on ICE detainees and their families. The theme tonight, I cannot imagine someone more at risk than those who have ICE in their crosshairs, or those who speak up for them or volunteer to help them. BIJAN has 4 values. We honor people's dignity and choice in a system that denies dignity and choice. We expect messiness, confusion, and discomfort, but we choose courage and trust. Our decentralized network is mainly virtual connections. With an ever-changing, cruel system, things can get confusing very fast. We judge the system, not the people. We don't judge people if they have a criminal record or if they have very complex family situations. We judge the system that puts people in cages and sends them away from their families and communities to difficult and dangerous circumstances. We fight for one another as family. Many of our volunteers have little lived experience navigating jails, including myself. But we fight for the people we support as if they were our own family. If you want to learn more about BIJAN or how to donate or get involved, please join Jane and me at our table out during the intermission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robin, and thanks to the Boston Immigration Justice Accompaniment Network, or BIJAN, for the work you are doing to make sure that the American creed is matched by American deeds. Have you enjoyed what you've heard so far? Well, that is great. We have a whole other half for you coming up, but perhaps some of you out there are thinking, you know, I'd really love to learn how to tell a story, but I am not sure how to do so. Well, you are in luck, my friend. I have an announcement for you. This year, Voices on the Green is thrilled to be offering 2 oral storytelling workshops so you can have your own storytelling talents uplifted. Now, these programs, which are offered with the support of the Carey Memorial Library, with the Community Endowment of Lexington, they're going to be co-sponsored by the Carey Memorial Library. Now, the first of these workshops is hosted by our own storytelling director, Suzanne Adams, with co-facilitation by storyteller Deborah Jacoby Twig, and they will occur on Monday, November 17th at 7 p.m. at the Lexington Community Center, and it is free. Okay, that used to be 1 syllable, now it's 2. It is free. Okay, so back here in Parish Hall, you can scan the QR code, or you can check out the display that's in the back in Parish Hall during the intermission. Alrighty, before we head into intermission, we want to invite you, just give you a little bit of context. We want you to go through here in the doors to the left, not through these doors over here, but right here to the left. You are free to enter and partake of whatever is back there. Have yourself some refreshments. We ask that when you return in an anorexic 15 minutes that you do not bring any food into the sanctuary. However, I still think it's okay to bring beverages. Is that correct? Yes, you may bring beverages into the sanctuary with you. We also ask that you meet our community partner, that you talk to the storytellers, and that you see so many other displays back there and give them some attention and converse, of course, with one another, and also look at the wonderful works of Ben Soule. Thank you for being so good and so patient. We will see you back in 15 minutes. Welcome back to the second half of Voices on the Green, risking it. We would love to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the Community Endowment of Lexington, for their generous support this last year. Are there any folks from the CEL in the house tonight? We have any folks in the house? Even if not, in absentia, please give them a round of applause. Hopefully you, during the intermission, met some people, talked with the storytellers, maybe you saw some of Ben's works, maybe you've spoken with our community partner, and we do appreciate that, because this is about us meeting each other and reaching out to one another in humanship. And for me, in a time when so many things are trying to keep us from doing this with one another, this to me is a small kind of resistance to what that is. And our first storyteller of this half will be Deborah Lapides. Deb is well known and loved by the members of the Voices on the Green community because she just works so hard to make all of this happen. She is one of those worker bees who bring us the honey. Can you please give her, even before she comes up, a round of applause? And what we did not know about Deb is that she has a couple of go-to feel-good flicks, and one is Pride and Prejudice, and the other is Back to the Future. And I was like, Pride and Prejudice, Back to the Future. The poet in me senses there's got to be some sort of connecting bridge there, but I can't see it right now, so if somebody does, hook a brother up and let me know. Now, Deb has a weakness. She has a weakness for eggnog with extra nog, if you know what I'm saying. Mangoes and key lime pie, and as an experiment, she once risked asking a guy out, and he turned her down. And she was like, oh, hell no, he didn't. I ain't doing that no more. Harumph. That's just my thought about how, I wasn't there, y'all. Okay, it's just my thought of how that probably went down. But she decided, she said she was never going to do it again, but she did it again. And this time, right, she asked a man out who had the good sense to say, oh, hell yeah, right? And they've been on that date for 30 years. If you would please welcome to the stage, Deborah Lapides.
I'm in Utah, bumping along in an SUV on my way to a day of rappelling with my family. Now, rappelling can be fun if you think tying a rope around you and jumping off a cliff is a hoot. I'm not sure I'm brave enough for a full day of it, but my husband Murray and our 19-year-old daughter Alexandra are so jumped up about it that I decide to join them. We arrive at Water Canyon, outside Zion National Park, and hop out. Our guide, Al, carries the equipment and leads us up a steep hike. I feel butterflies in my stomach. I have rappelled before, once, in a rainforest in Puerto Rico with my daughter, but something about the sheer vertical drop of these dry rock cliffs triggers my fear of heights. We reach the first rappel, and my daughter, the rock climber and gymnast, goes first. She straps herself into her harness, glances over her shoulder into the rock canyon, and calmly steps off the edge. In minutes, she reaches the bottom, sends the rope back up. My turn. I tie the rope into my harness and slowly walk backward, taking little steps, leaning back in my rappel. I remember how to do this. After one solid step after another, and soon I reach the bottom. My husband, Murray, reaches the bottom too, with no problems. By the third rappel, I am upbeat and confident. I'm rocking this. Murray and Alexandra go down ahead of me. This time, when I step off the edge, I'm yanked off balance. I tumble upside down. My feet are in the air above my head. Blood's pounding in my chest. I don't know what to do. I can't look down. My guide, Al, is on the cliff above me. He can't see me, but he knows I've stopped. What happened? I'm upside down, I yell. My foot's caught under the rope. I can't budge. Okay, Al says. That's why we use 2 lines. I'll loosen the safety rope. Just hang on. Just hang on? I'm dangling like a spider in a web, upside down, 75 feet above a rock canyon floor. My head's throbbing, my heart's hammering. I can't look down, I'll pass out. Just hang on. It's sweltering up there, and my forehead breaks out in a cold sweat. My hands are gripping the rope so tightly that I have a slow burn in my biceps. Just hang on. The moments tick by. It feels like an hour since I flipped. Finally, I hear Al say, okay, I've loosened the safety rope. I can lower you down as you are, upside down. Or you can pull yourself up, right yourself, and rappel down. Well, there's no way I'm going to be lowered upside down like a sack of potatoes. My dignity's worth more than that. I want to die upright. I'll rappel down, I tell Al. So I grab the rope and pull myself up, hand over hand, into a sit-up with my knees locked against the rock. Then I square myself off, bend my knees, lean back, and slowly inch my way down the wall. I have to stop a couple of times to ease the pain in my aching back. When I reach the ground, Murray and Alexandra surround me with hugs and anxious faces. I tell them I think I'm okay. I'm in one piece. I tell Murray, I bet you caught all of that on your camera, didn't you? Nope, he says, not one shot. I didn't want that to be my last photo of you. That stops my heart. My daughter doesn't say a word. She just looks at me with eyes as big as moons. Al hoots and hollers his way down, lands, and says, I bet you always wondered what it was like for those Cirque du Soleil performers high above the big top. Now you know. Yeah, I say, I just didn't think I was going to find out about that today. Al tells me there's no shame in hiking down to the canyon floor while Alexandra and Murray finish their rappels. I'm a sensible person, so I think about quitting. After what I consider to be my near-death experience, maybe the prudent thing is to say, I've done enough rappelling for one day. When we hiked the Cinque Terre in Italy, Murray and Alexandra had to finish the last leg of that hike on their own. I wasn't in good enough shape to finish that leg, which my daughter said was the prettiest of the whole day. And I'd missed it. and missed out on a shared family experience. So, no more regrets from quitting. And I can't fail again in front of my daughter. We make it to the next rappel, and my daughter steps in, steps off the cliff, and disappears as quick as a desert squirrel. Twin emotions battle inside me. I'm petrified, but equally stubbornly determined. I end up making the decision that I'm going to do it. I walk up to our guide, Al, and say, you know what? I have to do this. I don't want any more regrets from failing. So my fear of regret pushes me forward. Al looks me in the eye and says, you gonna do this? I said, yep, I am. I quickly hook into my harness before I lose my nerve. I bend my knees, square myself off, lean back, and walk off of that cliff. And I do it again and again all afternoon. On the hike back to the car, Al sidles up to me and says, you know, it's not that unusual to flip upside down. It happens all the time. I think he's just trying to make me feel better, and I tell him so. No, really, he says, it's quite common. What's uncommon is to continue once you've done that. Well, that perks me up a little, and I ask, well, how unusual is it? And he says, well, for most people, once they go upside down, their day is finished. He told me that he's been a guide for many years, and only one other person continued with their rappels after hanging upside down. Well, now I'm smiling. Yeah, he said, it was this guy who was part of a bachelor party, and he cried. A voice behind me says, but you never cried. It's my daughter. She's been trailing us, and she's heard every word. In that moment, my heart soars. I proved to myself that confidence inspires courage. And I'm so happy my daughter was here to see her mother get back in that harness, get back on the cliff, try again, and take another risk. It's 8 years later. I watch an amazing aerialist perform with grace and strength. It's my grown daughter. She is now a professional aerial artist, and she performs risks that people come and watch her. She also loves teaching young women that you can do this too. I watch her, and my heart soars.
Deb Lapides. Deb, thank you for that harrowing, inspiring, and humorous story about how taking the right risk can lead to self-discovery, personal transformation, and can also inspire the next generation as well. To bring you a wonderful song that speaks to that desire to risk becoming transformed is Ty and Sarah performing Craig Carnella's Flight. Ty and Sarah, take it away.
Let me sway like the shade of a tree. Let me me swirl like a cloud in a storm on the sea. Wish me on my way through the dawning day. I wanna rise, wanna flow, wanna spin, wanna grow on the side of the hill. I don't care if the train runs late, if the checks don't clear, if the house burns down. I'll be off where the reeds run wild, where the seeds fall far from this earth downtown. And I'll start to soar. Watch me rain, I'm alright. Catch a ship that'll catch me astray. Get caught in the wind, I'll just have to obey. Time flying Let me leave behind all the clouds in my mind. I wanna wake without wondering why, finding myself in a bird for the sky. I'll just roll. Let me lose all control. I wanna float like a wish in a well, free as the sound of the sea in a shell. I don't know, but maybe I'm just a fool. I should stick to the ground. I should stay where I'm at. Maybe everyone has hunger like this, and the hunger will pass. But I can't think like that. All I know is somewhere through clearing, there's a flickering of sunlight in a river long and wide. And I have such a river inside. Let me run through a field in the night. Let me lift from the ground till my soul is in flight. Let me sway like the shade of a tree. Let me swirl like a cloud in a storm on the sea. Let me leave behind all the clouds in my mind. I wanna flow, wanna rise, wanna sail, wanna grow on the side of the hill, wanna shift like a wave rolling on, wanna drift from this path I've been traveling upon before I am gone.
Thank you, Ty and Sarah. Our next teller says his wife isn't sure whether he's guided by a sense of optimism or faith, because he always has the sense that everything is going to work out fine. In addition to having been an educator here in Lexington for many years, he is an author, singer, cellist who once hit a hole-in-one, but nobody was around to see it. Sure. It was this big. Yep. Steve is going to tell us a story of a risk that he took when he was a younger teacher, that in hindsight, he sees that decision to do so just a little bit differently. Will you please join me in welcoming Stephen Levy?
Sir, I just had back surgery a couple weeks ago. I'll sit. Is that good? Thank you. Just like me. I think that'll work. Thank you. So it wasn't out of courage that I took this risk. It was more that I just found myself in a place where I seemed to be the only one who could say what I felt needed to be said. Here's how it happened. I moved to Boston in 1974 to help start the Waldorf School. After 13 years there, I was fortunate that Dave Horton took a risk to hire me to teach 4th grade at Bowman School. I had no public school experience. I didn't have a teaching certificate. My teaching methods were a bit unorthodox. I think Dave is here tonight. I saw him earlier. And Dave, wherever you are, I just want to thank you to this day for taking a chance on me. I began teaching at Bowman in 1987, and the teachers had been bargaining with the school committee for a contract since January. And by November, it seemed that the strike was inevitable. So at a union meeting, the leaders told us that our strategy is we want to get lots of publicity and a lot of parent support in order to put pressure on the school committee. I was not in favor of the strike. It was illegal. I was getting paid twice as much as I was getting at the Waldorf School. And so not being really aware at all of the sort of union culture and politics, I got up at the meeting and I said, I think I know a way that we can avoid going on strike. Let's just keep teaching. And when we get our checks on Friday, we'll just send them back. We'll put a little note, sorry, it's not enough. We deserve more. Publicity? I think we're talking national. Parent support? I mean, I'll bet they would pay us more than the school committee might to keep teaching their kids. They'd have to pay babysitters and inconvenience at home. So when I finished, there were a few chuckles, and people said, well, they liked the idea of thinking out of the box, but they didn't really take anything I said very seriously. Ultimately, the teachers did decide to go on strike. The vote was, I think, 283 to 97. But then somebody made a motion to make the strike vote unanimous, and it just takes a majority of the people there to call the vote unanimous, so they even took all of our no votes away. So the picket began then on Monday, November the 30th. I respected that my colleagues had some issues, but they weren't mine. So I didn't cross the picket line, but I didn't join them either. I did try to arrange to teach my class like somewhere outside of the school. I had Olivia Wilson in my class, 4th grader, and I thought, well, maybe we could have our class, we could meet at Wilson Farm. It'd be an amazing experience. I asked the town manager, is there a way we could do some kind of project helping the town? I asked Fulton Church, like, do you have a room that maybe we could use there? But none of these turned out to be very viable. So after the first day of picketing, I got a call from the union rep at the end of the day. They said, Levy, we just had a great time today. There were 25 parents that came by, and they brought donuts and coffee and lots of good energy. We hope you'll join us tomorrow. And I explained my position and thought that would be the end of it. Next day, I get another call. Levy, people are starting to ask, where's Levy? You better think about coming and joining us tomorrow. And I explained again my position. Third day, the tone now was decidedly dark. Levy, people are starting to resent you. We may have to start reading the names of the no-shows at the union meetings that we have each morning. And I can't promise what it's going to be like for you when this strike is over. So this one put me over the edge. I mean, I was totally naive about union politics, about solidarity. Were they really trying to threaten my freedom of self-expression in America? I mean, this was coercion. So the next morning, I decided I'm going to go to the strike meeting. 350 teachers. Each school reported on all the events that happened at the school that day. You know, we had 25 parents that came. Yay! We had 8 no-shows. Boo! We had 4 people cross the picket line. Boo! And after everybody gave the report, there was time for open mic. And again, I'm sitting there, I think I'm the only one who can say what needs to be said. And I raised my hand and I walked up to the stage. And I began, I'm one of the no-shows. Just want to confess. And it was just utter silence. I said, I even went into the school the other day just to water Mrs. Wortman's plants because I know how much she loves them. I thought there might be a chuckle, but it was just a collective gasp. I explained my position, and I said that I recognize that you all have your concerns, but they just weren't mine, and please don't call me every night to coerce me to try to come and join you on the picket line. I went on a little bit about the American ideals. You know, like, I understand that unity is where our power is. I understand that's our bargaining chip, but it can't be coerced. I mean, we can't ask the American virtues of liberty and independence and individuality and free speech to fly half-mast under the flag of unity. And these are the kind of values we want to represent, we want to be representing for our students. I finished, and I just imagined there was going to be a standing ovation. That's how naive I was. And it was just dead silence. And then there were a few like, who is that guy? Get him out of here. Boo, boo. And they continued booing as I walked off the stage. And I went home that afternoon just devastated. Not so much because of the reaction I got, just because of my naivete and just how much I didn't understand the culture I was in. And I didn't understand who these people were. I was so misjudged the whole context of what I was in. And deeply humiliated by my naivete and my pride, I thought, well, okay, tomorrow I'm going to join the picket line. So Thursday morning, I went just to hear people's stories. What is this really about? I just can't. And, you know, one person told me, Well, I was on this committee to redesign the report card, and we met for 1.5 years. And we came up with this beautiful, and then we got a new superintendent, and they just tossed the whole thing. And I heard lots of stories like that. So money was always apparently at the surface of what people were after, but much deeper was just a sense of being noticed and respected and trusted for their expertise. So I had a lot more empathy for their position, and I understood the risks that they were taking. Fortunately, the strike was settled over the weekend. So on Monday, we all returned to school, and I was able to reconcile with a number of my colleagues, but there may still be some who resent me. I hope that's none of you here tonight, but if it is, then come on, take a risk, and let's talk about it after the show, because I've learned just that only by taking those kind of risks with each other can we really develop meaningful relationships and genuine community with each other and with our students. Thank you.
Steve, thank you for telling us that story about risk and for further risking, especially nowadays, to be open to conversation with people who might disagree with you. But what happens if you are dealing with someone who's not interested in conversation, but in confrontation? Confrontation not about what you believe or what you think, but the very fact that you exist. How do you even begin to feel that you can risk speaking to such a person? Well, our final teller of the evening might be able to shed a bit of light on that. Please welcome Michael Liu.
My father was Chinese and my mother was English, which is why I look Greek, or Italian or Mexican or something, but I don't look Chinese and I don't look English. When you're a kid, you want to belong to a group, you want to fit in. And sometimes it'll cause you to go along with things that you're not comfortable with, which don't represent who you are. Sometimes it'll cause you to remain silent when people are saying things that you really should object to. And when you do that, you're denying who you are, and you feel a little bit ashamed. When I was in elementary school, I was the only Chinese kid. And then I got to junior high school, and there were only 2 other Chinese kids, Roland and Chesley Chen, but they were identical twins, so in my mind, they only counted as 1. And in any case, 3 is not a group, and I didn't look like them. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, and I worked very hard to assimilate. I went to innumerable seders. I learned to recite the 4 questions in Hebrew. This was a real head scratcher for my Chinese father. And when I was 13, he sat me down. He said, Michael, I want you to grasp something. We are Chinese. I am not giving you a bar mitzvah. In the summertime, we would go to England, to my aunt's house in Manchester. They lived in council housing, which is a kind of government housing. And I was friends with all the kids on that block. But this was a time of a lot of South Asian immigration to England, and there was a fair amount of anti-immigrant sentiment. So I get outside of that neighborhood, and kids are not so friendly, and they would call me racial slurs. But they call me the wrong racial slurs. Now, when someone calls you a racial slur, and it's not actually your race, it doesn't offend you. It puzzles you. It's like, how do you respond? I mean, do you, correct them? Fast forward to when my college years, I went to England, And one evening, I went to a pub with my cousin and a neighbor, Sean. We go into this pub, and it was packed, no place to sit. In a corner, there were a bunch of skinheads playing darts. In the UK in the 70s, skinheads were scary, like violent. There was one table, like a table of six, one of those round tables, and it was occupied by this giant guy. He looked like a mattress with a head. If you take a mattress and you put a pea coat on it and you stick a head on it, that's what it looked like. And it was clear that there was some relationship between him and the skinheads, even though he was not a skinhead. It was also clear that you do not sit at this man's table unless he wants you to sit at the table. And he wanted me to sit at the table. He was trying to catch my eye. He was grinning at me, he's beaming at me, he's beckoning us to the table. We have no place to sit. So we go down, we sit at his table, and he starts chatting me up. He's looking at me. He was from Liverpool, but he was in Manchester to be treated for some broken ribs, which he had gotten in a soccer riot. He was a soccer hooligan. He would go to soccer games with his mates and beat people up, and if he was lucky, they would start a riot. And this was a form of entertainment. So this conversation is taking a dark turn, but then it went darker, and he starts talking about immigrants. They don't belong in England. They should be sent back to where they came from, particularly Pakistanis. They should be deported. Even if they're citizens, they should be deported because England should be for the English. I don't know, does this sound familiar at all? So, but he wanted me to know that he was not a racist. No, really, he's looking at me, he said, I'm not a racist because you, meaning me, you are a real American, you belong in America. No one should deport you because you're an Indian. The guy thought I was a Native American. So I'm digesting this. And then he starts talking about the Holocaust. He's a Holocaust denier. And it turns out the guy is a member of the NF, the National Front. He's a neo-Nazi. And he's saying the Holocaust was a fabrication of the Jews who precipitated the Second World War for war profiteering and other things that I'm not going to go into. And he's smiling at me all this time, but behind that, there was this palpable sense of impending violence, of the threat of violence. Like he was going to push this conversation to ever more extreme positions. And then if you objected, if you pushed back, if you got in an argument, they would beat you up. Or you could just remain silent, and in your silence, sort of convey tacit approval. I'm not a brave guy, but I don't want to get beaten up, but I can't agree with this guy. But on the other hand, you send silence and sort of suggest that, and is that who I am? So finally I say, look, I gotta stop you. You're wrong about what you're saying. There really was a Holocaust, and the Jewish people did not precipitate the Second World War. And I can tell you this because I know something about it. I can tell you this from a position of authority, of personal knowledge, because I'm not actually a Native American. I'm a Sephardic Jew. And that's why I look like this. This is what I call my white lie. And his jaw drops down to his chest. And we book out of there because in about 10 seconds, he was going to realize that he was being ridiculed. Now, I am not a Native American. I'm not Greek, I'm not Italian, I'm not Mexican, I'm not Pakistani. To tell you the truth, I don't know what I am, but I do know who I am. And I know that sometimes it's worth being what you're not in order to be who you are. And this may be a small thing, but that night, I was proud to be a Sephardic Jew. Thank you.
Michael Liu. You. Thank you, Michael, for that humorous and poignant story. One of the things I pass along to my students at Clark is that every one of us belongs to a group that if we were walking down the street and another group saw us, they'd say, geez, here comes one of them. Michael's story brings into sharp relief that just by being born, we're risking something. Just by being who we are, we're risking something. And also we risk something if we aren't who we are, if we try to be something else. Our final song, Out There. It comes from the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and it speaks powerfully to the sentiment of risk and being who you are. In the musical, Quasimodo wants to go into the world and be part of it, but his villainous and controlling caretaker, Minister Frollo, tries to dissuade him from risking. He tells Quasimodo, the world is cruel. The world is wicked. It's I alone who you can trust in this whole city. I am your only friend. I who keep you, feed you, teach you, dress you. I who look upon you without fear. How can I protect you, boy, unless you always stay in here, away in here. Remember what I taught you, Quasimodo. You are deformed.
I am deformed.
Then you are ugly.
I am ugly.
And these are crimes for which this world has little pity. You do not comprehend.
You are my one defender.
Out there, they'll revile you as monster.
I am monster.
Why invite their curses and their consternation? Stay in here. Be faithful to me.
I will be faithful.
Grateful to me.
Grateful.
Do as I say. Obey. Stay in here. Remember, Quasimodo, this is your sanctuary.
My sanctuary.
Gazing at the people down below me. All my life I watch them as I hide up here alone, hungry for the histories they show me. All my life I memorize their faces, knowing them as they will never know me. All my life I wondered how it feels to pass a day not above them, but part of them, and of them living in the sun. Give me one day of them, all I ask is one, all forever. Oh, there, where they all live unaware. What I'd give, what I'd dare, just to live one day out there, among the millers and the weavers and their wives. Through the roosing gables I can see them. Every day they shout and scold and go about their lives, heedless of the gift it is to be them. If I were winners, when I treasure every instant out there, strolling by the Seine, a taste of morning out there, like ordinary men who freely walk about there. then I swear I'll be content with my share. Won't resent, won't despair, old and bent, I won't care. I'll have spent one day out
Sarah and Ty, please keep that going. Keep that going for Sarah McDonough to the stage, please. Janel Showalter, Ben Soule, our community partners, BIJAN, Deborah Lapides, Stephen Levy, Michael Liu. Thank you all for being here. And please, all the members of the voices on the green team, please come forward. Give everyone here a round of applause. Sarah and Ty, please come to the stage as well. This is a wonderful evening. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for what you've brought to us, how you've opened us, how you've, what I like to say is open up the mouth and let the drum that beats in the chest be heard. And we always love to do this. It is a labor of love, and we love it when we look out and we see folks here being part of our commonwealth right here. And I want to leave everyone tonight with the concluding stanza of the poem I read, a paraphrase of it from William Arthur Ward. And he says, risks must be taken because the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing. The person who risks nothing may avoid suffering and sorrow, but they cannot grow or truly live. Only a person who risks is free. Have a good night, everybody. Be good to yourselves and each other. Picture time if you want it. Picture time if you want it.